Well, this isn't the show I really wanted to do, but yesterday, Wednesday rather, we lost wrestler, actor, and all-around great human being Terry Funk at age 79. I first discovered Terry Funk when I found championship wrestling from Florida back in, I guess it was, late 70s, early 80s on an off station on UHF. He was in Florida and he was pouring a can of motor oil over his head and dumping a bag of dirt over it, saying how he wanted to know how it felt like to be a Florida cracker or something like that. That was the first time I saw him. He was having a feud with Dusty Rhodes back then in Florida. Tery became the NWA champion, I think twice, I believe. Tery was one of those guys who did a lot of firsts. He had an empty arena match with Jerry the King Lawler in Memphis, Tennessee, where basically he was stabbed in the eye with a splinter from a chair and sold it like crazy. Tery was involved in a lot of crazy stuff, anywhere from feuding with the Sheik and Mark Lewin out in Detroit, from going over to Japan and feuding with the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher, tagging with his brother Dory Funk Jr. Up in the Northeast, of course, we didn't get to see a lot of Terry Funk, but later on in life, after WCW, where basically he came out of nowhere during a Flair match and challenged Flair to a fight, and then pile drove Flair through a table, and later on tried to smother him with a plastic bag on TBS, which was a definite fucking no-no. And they blocked that scene out and stopped. I think he was suspended from TV or something like that. But anyway, Funk started appearing closer to where I lived in Jersey as he was working for TWA, Tri-States Wrestling Alliance, NWA with Dennis Carluzzo, where basically I saw him in North Halden as he battled Abdullah the Butcher. That was a long-running feud that went on for decades, sort of like Abby Brody. But Funk would get involved in a lot of feuds. The big feud was him and Eddie Gilbert, which was like 10 minutes from where I used to live in Wayne, New Jersey at a high school. This spilled over into Eastern Championship Wrestling, which would soon become ECW. And that's where I saw Tery a lot. He committed to this promotion because he wanted to do something, and he was at an age when basically other wrestlers of his era were pretty much taking it easy. I mean, they were still doing shows, but doing minimal, like, being in a tag match and coming in for a couple of minutes and then going out, something like that. Tery gave it his all no matter what he did. Close to 60 years old, he was doing moonsaults off the top rope onto piles of garbage cans. Infamous feuds that were going on at that time. Him against Sabu, him against Cactus Jack, it was all over. I would go see ECW whenever I could. I saw him defend the belt against, I think it was Stevie Richards down in Asbury Park. All the pay-per-views. Tery was just one of those guys that basically could do it all and did it, and had the respect of his peers, because when he was doing indie shows like Jersey All Pro and places like that, he'd sit in the back, and when the guys would come in after their matches, he would critique their matches, tell them what he thought worked, tell them what he thought didn't work. He was pretty much of a mentor to any wrestler who would allow him to talk to him. Guys I know like Steve Monster Mack, Madman Pondo, and others all sang his praises, that Tery was the guy that basically, was every man. And Tery could also act. He was Frankie the Thumper in Stallone's Paradise Alley, and did a couple more things with Stallone, but also had a TV series, Wild Side, with William Smith and a few other people that lasted a season or two. And then at one point actually had his own TV show, a detective thing called Tequila and Bonet, which he was teamed with a bulldog, I think, which didn't work. But be that as it may, Tery would still appear at events and conventions up until about 3 years ago. Injuries and head injuries, and I believe he was suffering from dementia in his last few years. Rob Feinstein, the founder of RF Video, was always in touch with him, would always use him whenever he could, bring him in for the fans. But it got to the point where Tery couldn't fly anymore. We know he wasn't doing well, and Wednesday he passed away at age 79. I can't think of anyone who has a bad word to say about Terry Funk. Terry Funk was in some legendary matches. Like I said, while other guys were scaling themselves back, Terry was pushing forward. He went to FMW for Onita and feuded with the Sheik over there, with Sabu and stuff. IWA King of the Death matches, him and Cactus Jack went to the finals with the exploding ring match. Just so much in a career that spanned, close to 5 decades, I think, maybe 6 decades. Tery never slowed down. Tery was one of those guys that evolved with the business. He never rested on his laurels. He never, took it easy on a match or things like that. He was always out in front, always gung-ho, always gave his best. I got this shirt when I finally got to meet Terry Funk at an AIW event here in Cleveland. Unfortunately, he didn't bring any pictures to sign, and I just walked up and I said, dude, I just want to shake your hand for all you've done for the business and shit, and then I bought the shirt. No one was sure what he was going to do that night. There was a match between Eddie Kingston and I think it was, Josh Prohibition. And the manager, the Duke, was fucking around at ringside, and all of a sudden Funk stormed out of the back with that deadpan look on his face, took the Duke, beat the shit out of him, threw him through the concession stand, smashed everything over his head he could, went back, beat the shit out of Kingston, threw him through a bunch of tables, and then went off. That was the last time I saw Terry Funk, and the crowd popped huge for that little run-in. When I met him, he was very nice, very complimentary, sweetheart of a guy. I know that Sid Haig years ago had told me that he met Funk and what a nice guy he was and things like that. The bottom line is, professional wrestling has just lost a guy who can never be replaced. Terry Funk was a one-of-a-kind individual. Like I said, he evolved with the business. He never took it easy, never took a night off, worked hurt, worked injured, whatever. His feuds were legendary, and they will probably test the bounds of time, because nobody ever did stuff like that. I mean, some of this stuff with him and Sabu, the Born to Be Wired match where he almost cut his own throat with the barbed wire, was astounding. Just an amazing career of a really nice guy, a real icon in the business, and I sit here almost with tears in my eyes because I know the guy can never be replaced, and I know his influence on wrestling will be felt for decades. So it's just sad to see a guy like this go. All I can say is rest in peace, Terry. I know you had it rough at the end with the Dimension stuff like that, but your fans always loved you, and we know that you loved us. And the wrestling world, like I said, has just suffered a great loss today. So all I can say is thank you for everything you've done for the business, and thank you for entertaining us for so many decades. And all I can think is you're up there with Dusty and the Sheik and other guys, just kicking back and reminiscing about what you did here. And rest in peace, my friend. You will never be forgotten. And that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And we will catch you on the flip side.